The town of Red Hollow had already decided who she was. They said Clara Hale was too wild for any man, too sharp-tongued, too stubborn, too broken to be tamed. She rode her horse like she was outrunning ghosts, worked her late father's ranch with hands scarred by rope burns and loss, and looked men in the eye without lowering her gaze. After her fiancé vanished with her savings and her trust, the town decided that a woman who survived alone must be dangerous. Clara stopped correcting them. It was easier to be feared than pitied. Every morning, the plains stretched wide and unforgiving around her ranch, dust rolling like slow waves beneath the sun. Clara fixed fences, bargained in town, and ignored the whispers in the saloon when she passed by for supplies. Men watched her with interest or resentment, especially the Callahan brothers, who had been circling her land like wolves since her father's grave was still fresh. They smiled too easily, offered help she didn't want, and hinted that a woman alone couldn't hold property forever. Clara knew what they meant. She also knew she would rather lose everything than bend. The silent cowboy arrived one evening when the sky burned orange and the wind carried the smell of rain that never came. He rode a tired gray horse and stopped at the edge of town, as if deciding whether Red Hollow deserved his presence. His coat was worn, his hat pulled low, and his eyes carried something heavy, regret maybe, or memory. He didn't ask questions. He didn't boast. He tied his horse, stepped into the saloon, and ordered coffee instead of whiskey. People noticed that. They noticed everything about men like him. Clara noticed him too, though she pretended not to. She felt it before she saw it, a quiet shift, like the air before a storm. When their eyes met, it wasn't fire or sparks. It was recognition. Two people who knew what it meant to stand alone. The cowboy nodded once, respectful and distant, then looked away. That should have been the end of it. But as Clara rode back to her ranch, under a sky full of stars, she realized something unsettled her more than the Callahans ever had. For the first time in a long while, she wondered who might be riding behind her in the dark. The cowboy's name was Elias Ward, though he didn't offer it freely. He found work mending fences and breaking horses, never staying long in one place. But something about Clara's land kept him there. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the way she treated him like an equal, not a savior. He worked without asking questions, spoke only when needed, and paid for his meals. Clara watched him from a distance, wary but curious. Trust, once broken, did not grow back easily. As days passed, the Callahan brothers grew bolder. They showed up uninvited, commenting on Elias's presence with thin smiles. They spoke of debts Clara didn't owe and papers that didn't exist. Elias listened from the shadows, his jaw tight, his hands steady. He knew men like them. He had ridden with worse once, back when anger guided his choices and blood followed him like a shadow. He had left that life behind, or so he believed. But Red Hollow had a way of waking old ghosts. One evening, Clara finally asked Elias why he stayed. He looked out at the plains, the wind tugging at his coat, and said he was tired of running. He didn't explain from what. She didn't press. That honesty, simple and unpolished, mattered more than a story. Slowly, something careful grew between them. Not promises, not dreams, just understanding. Shared silence by the fire, 2 cups of coffee at dawn. The knowledge that someone else was watching the horizon too. Trouble came quietly, the way it always did. Clara returned from town to find fence posts broken and cattle scattered. A message carved into wood warned her to sell while she still could. Fear crept into her chest, cold and familiar. Elias found her standing alone in the dust, fighting tears she refused to shed. He wanted to step forward, to confront the brothers, to end it the old way. But that path had cost him everything once before. Clara, sensing the weight in his silence, told him she would not be saved by violence. She needed a partner, not another storm. That night, Elias lay awake listening to the wind. He knew the Callahans would not stop. He also knew that walking away would be easier than staying. As dawn approached, he made a choice that would either redeem him or drag him back into the life he swore he'd left behind. The showdown did not come with gunfire at noon. It came with words, documents, and witnesses When Elias rode with Clara into town and stood beside her, silent but unyielding, he had found the truth the Callahans buried, false claims, forged signatures, threats whispered in dark corners. The sheriff listened. The town watched. For the first time, Clara was not standing alone. When the brothers realized their power was slipping, anger cracked their careful smiles. One reached for intimidation. Elias stepped forward, his voice calm, his presence enough. Sometimes strength didn't need a bullet. Red Hollow changed after that, slowly and unwillingly. People looked at Clara differently, not as a woman too wild to belong, but as one too strong to break. Elias finished the work he started, repairing fences and mending more than land. When his time came to leave, he packed quietly before sunrise. Clara found him at the gate, the plains stretching endlessly behind him. She didn't ask him to stay. He didn't promise he would. They both knew promises made in fear never lasted. Elias told her he had spent years believing he ruined everything he touched. Clara told him maybe he was only meant to change things, not own them. They shared a look filled with everything unsaid, pain, hope, and something like peace. When he rode away, dust rising behind him, Clara felt the ache of loss she knew too well. But this time, it was different. It wasn't abandonment. It was choice. Days later, as Clara worked the ranch under a wide, open sky, a familiar figure appeared on the horizon. A gray horse, a silent cowboy. Elias rode back, slower this time, like a man who had finally found where he belonged. Clara didn't smile. She didn't run. She simply waited, heart steady, knowing that being wild had never meant being unlovable. It meant being free, enough to choose who rode beside. For the second time Elias Ward stayed, it was not with the quiet uncertainty of a drifter. It was with intention. He repaired the old barn roof before winter settled in, helped Clara move cattle to higher ground, and stood beside her in town without caring who watched. Red Hollow noticed. Some approved, some didn't. Change always unsettled places built on old habits. For Clara, having someone beside her did not erase the past. It challenged it. Nights were still long, and memories still sharp. There were moments when she woke before dawn, heart racing, convinced she would turn and find Elias gone like everyone else. But he was always there, saddling horses, pouring coffee, or staring toward the horizon as if guarding something fragile. Trust didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in pieces. Elias carried his own weight. He still saw faces from a life he never spoke about. Men who had followed violence like a calling. Redemption, he had learned, was not a moment. It was a choice made daily. Being with Clara made that choice harder and easier all at once. Harder, because he finally had something to lose. Easier, because for the first time, he had something worth protecting without destroying himself. The town's resistance came quietly at first. Work dried up for Clara in Red Hollow. Supplies cost more. Doors closed sooner when she entered. Someone loosened the corral latch one night, sending horses into the dark. Elias found Clara standing in the dust again, jaw set, refusing to cry. He felt the old anger stir, sharp and familiar. The part of him that believed fear was the only language men understood, whispered loudly. But Clara's hand on his arm stopped him. She didn't want a war. She wanted a future. Trouble finally took shape in the form of a stranger. A man from Elias's past who recognized him despite the years. The look in the man's eyes carried questions, threats, and unfinished business. That night, Elias told Clara everything. Not the details, but the truth. He had once ridden with men who took instead of built. He had walked away, leaving consequences behind. Clara listened in silence. When he finished, she asked him one thing, whether he was running again or staying to face it. Elias didn't answer right away. Outside, the wind pressed against the walls like a warning. He knew the past had found him, and that staying might put Clara in danger. Leaving would keep her safe, but break something fragile they had begun to build. As he stepped outside under a restless sky, Elias understood that the hardest kind of courage was not riding into danger, but standing still when every instinct told him to flee.